She touched my hand and whispered, "If you leave now, I'll never say it again." Those words froze me in place. Rain was tapping against her porch roof. Her fingers were trembling on mine. And for the first time in years, I had no idea what the right choice was. I only knew one thing. If I stepped away, something important would disappear forever. I'm 48, divorced for almost 3 years, and for most of that time, I believed that whatever people call a second chance simply wasn't meant for me. I work long hours, live quietly, and keep my life simple, maybe too simple. Most evenings feel the same. Dinner, paperwork, a walk around the block, bed. I convinced myself I liked it that way. At least I did until she moved into the house next door. I noticed her the first morning carrying 2 boxes at once, hair slightly messy from the wind, trying to balance everything without dropping it. She looked my age, maybe a little younger, beautiful in a quiet, natural way. When our eyes met, she smiled, the kind of smile that makes you straighten your shoulders without knowing why. I offered help. She politely declined, but thanked me with a soft laugh that stayed with me longer than it should have. Over the next weeks, our paths kept crossing. A short conversation near the driveway, a wave across the yard, a shared comment about the weather. Small things, but they added up. There was a warmth in her voice that made ordinary moments feel different. She carried herself like someone who had been hurt once and learned to stand tall anyway. And every time she spoke, I wanted to know more. One evening, she asked if I could help replace a flickering light on her porch. It should have taken 5 minutes, but we ended up talking for almost an hour about favorite movies, failed marriages, the strange comfort of starting over at nearly 50. She stood close enough that I could feel the softness of her breath when she laughed. When I climbed down the step ladder, our hands brushed. The touch was accidental, but neither of us pulled away right away. Something changed that night. I started catching myself looking toward her house before leaving for work, hoping to see her car. She began stopping by with leftover muffins or asking if I knew a good handyman. There was a shy sweetness in our conversations. Gentle teasing, long looks, small moments of silence that felt like invitations neither of us dared to accept fully. Still, she rarely talked about her past. And when she did, her voice tightened like she was carefully choosing what not to say. I didn't push. I figured she'd tell me when she was ready. It was a rainy Sunday when everything shifted. I brought her an umbrella I'd found knocked over by the wind. She opened the door slowly, as if unsure who it was. When she saw me, her expression softened, then changed into something deeper. Almost frightened, she stepped onto the porch. The rain made a soft curtain around us. For a moment, she just looked at me, her eyes bright with something she had been holding back. Then she reached out, touched my hand, and whispered the words that started all of this. "If you leave now, I'll never say it again." Her voice cracked on the last word. I felt her fingers tighten, almost pleading. I didn't understand what she meant, not fully. But I understood enough to know she was standing on the edge of something difficult, something vulnerable, something real. And for the first time in years, I felt my heart move before my thoughts did. I stayed. Even though I didn't yet know what she wanted to say or what it would cost both of us when she finally did. I don't know how long we stood like that on her porch. Her fingers wrapped around my hand and the rain drawing soft lines in the air. She didn't look away, and I realized I was holding my breath, afraid any sudden move would break whatever fragile thing had appeared between us. Finally, she let go, but only to gesture toward the small table by the window. We went inside. The house still smelled of fresh paint and cardboard from unpacked boxes. But there were warm touches now. A blanket over the couch, framed photos turned slightly away, as if she wasn't ready to let the world see them. She poured us tea with slow, careful movements, like someone who had learned to hide nervous hands. For a while, we talked about nothing important. The weather, work, the noisy dog 2 houses down, yet every sentence felt like it was circling around the same unspoken thing. Then she went quiet. Her eyes drifted to my hand on the table, and before I could say anything, she reached across and laid her palm over mine. It was a simple touch, but it felt intentional this time, not accidental. "You're the first person in a long time who makes this place feel less empty," she said softly. My heart stumbled. I told her she did the same for me, that the street felt different since she moved in. I didn't try to make it sound casual. At our age, pretending usually hurts more than honesty. She smiled and something in me loosened. We sat like that, her hand on mine, our shoulders almost touching. The porch light cast a soft glow over her face, and I caught myself studying every line, every small scar of a life before I knew her. When the rain eased, I knew I should leave, but I didn't want to. I stood, thanked her for the tea, and she walked me to the door. There, in the quiet, she rose on her toes and pressed a quick, hesitant kiss to my cheek. It was barely more than a brush of lips, but it sent a wave of warmth through me I hadn't felt in years. "Good night," she whispered. "Good night," I answered. That night, I lay awake, replaying the way her fingers fit between mine. The weight of that small kiss. The look in her eyes when she said the house felt less empty. The days after that moved faster. She started showing up in my routines as if she had always been there. Morning coffee on her steps before work. Short texts about small things that somehow meant everything. An invitation to try a restaurant downtown so we didn't both eat alone again. Those habits grew into something that felt dangerously like a life shared. The first time we really kissed was outside a grocery store. It was late, the parking lot almost empty, our hands full of paper bags. She laughed at something I said, stopped walking, and just looked at me with that warm, tired tenderness I was starting to recognize. "You really don't see it, do you?" she murmured. Before I could ask what she meant, she leaned in and kissed me. Slow and sure. No hesitation this time. Cars passed on the road. A cart rattled in the distance, but for a few seconds, it was just us. When she pulled back, there was a hint of fear behind her smile, as if she had just risked more than she could afford to lose. I wanted to tell her I felt the same fear and the same hope, but the words caught in my throat. So instead, I squeezed her hand and said the only thing that came, "Let me walk you home." We went back to our quiet street side by side, fingers intertwined, our shoulders brushing in a way that made it hard to remember what my life had felt like before her. For weeks, everything between us felt effortless. We slipped into a rhythm I hadn't known I was craving. Shared dinners, quiet walks, long conversations that drifted into the night. She laughed more, trusted more, let herself lean into my presence as if she finally believed I wouldn't vanish. Maybe that was why the mistake hurt her so deeply. It happened on a Thursday, one of those days when nothing goes right. Work was a mess. My phone kept buzzing with problems I couldn't solve. And by the time I got home, I felt drained in a way I hadn't felt since before we met. She texted asking if I wanted to stop by. I saw the message, hesitated, and typed something short and cold. "Not tonight. Busy." It wasn't fair. I knew it the moment I pressed send. The next morning, she was quieter. She didn't say anything directly, but her smile wasn't the same. Too polite, too careful. I wanted to fix it, but I convinced myself it would pass on its own. Instead of going to her place that evening, I let my coworker Laura talk me into grabbing a quick coffee after we finished a project. I didn't think twice about it. It was harmless, ordinary. But sitting there with her, I could already feel guilt crawling under my skin. And then, of course, she saw us. I didn't notice her immediately. I heard her before I saw her. The sound of my name spoken softly with that trembling note I knew too well. She stood a few feet away, her keys in her hand, her eyes fixed on the two of us. Not angry at first, just hurt, I stood so quickly the chair scraped across the floor. "It's not what it looks like," I said. The most useless sentence a man can offer. Laura said a quick goodbye and left. But the damage was already done. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse me of anything. She simply looked at me with this quiet, stunned disappointment, like something inside her had been confirmed. I thought, she began, then shook her head. I should have known better. I reached for her hand, but she stepped back. Not angrily, just protectively. The way someone does when an old wound suddenly reopens. I didn't do anything wrong. I tried to explain. It was just coffee, that's all. Her eyes lifted to mine. Then why does it feel like I've been here before? Those words cut deeper than any accusation. She turned and walked out of the cafe. I followed her outside, calling her name, but she didn't stop. She crossed the parking lot with her arms wrapped around herself as if holding back something she didn't want me to see. She didn't answer my messages that night or the next. Across the yard. Her light stayed off longer than usual. I sat on my porch with my phone in my hand, watching her windows glow faintly, hoping she'd step outside, hoping she'd give me a chance to fix what I'd broken. But she didn't. Then things got worse. Her ex-husband, someone she rarely spoke of, started showing up again. I saw him one morning on her porch talking to her with the kind of practice charm men like him never lose. She didn't let him inside, but she also didn't look away when he spoke. That hurt more than I wanted to admit. And there was the new neighbor, confident, loud, always offering help with anything she might need. I caught him laughing with her near the mailbox. One afternoon, she didn't seem interested, but the sight twisted something in me. I tried reaching out one last time. I walked to her door, rehearsing every apology I could think of. When she opened it, her eyes were tired, softer than I expected. I just need time, she said quietly. Please let me breathe. It wasn't rejection. It wasn't forgiveness either. It was something in between, a place where hope and fear lie side by side. I stepped back, nodded, and forced myself to walk away. Even though every part of me wanted to stay that night, lying awake, I kept replaying the look on her face at the cafe. That moment she saw me and believed I had chosen someone else. I realized then how fragile trust can be, especially for two people who have already lived a lifetime of disappointments. And I understood something else. If I wanted her in my life again, would have to earn it slowly, honestly, patiently. But for the first time since meeting her, I didn't know if she would ever let me close enough to try. A year can change a person more than they expect. And in my case, it changed almost everything. After she asked for time, we drifted into separate lives. Not out of anger, but out of quiet necessity. Somewhere deep down, we both understood we couldn't keep going the way we were. We needed space to heal, to grow, to understand what we wanted without fear guiding our choices. In those months, I threw myself into rebuilding the parts of my life I'd neglected. I started running again, fixing the old routines that had turned into excuses. I worked more, saved more, spent weekends repairing the porch I'd been ignoring for years. It felt good, strange, but good to become someone I could be proud of, even if nobody noticed. But I noticed her absence every day. There were mornings when I'd catch myself glancing toward her driveway, forgetting that we weren't part of each other's daily rhythm anymore. At night, I'd sometimes see her porch light flick on, a soft reminder that she was still there, but not mine to walk toward. I didn't know much about her life during that year, only that she was working through her own past. Settling things with her ex, rediscovering the strength she had buried. A mutual friend told me she'd joined a small therapy group and started painting again, something she'd given up after her divorce, knowing that made me strangely proud of her, even from afar. Then, nearly 18 months after everything fell apart, life found a way to cross our paths again. Our town began a community project to restore an old park by the river. One of those places everyone loved but no one maintained. I volunteered out of boredom at first. On the first day, I showed up with gloves and a rake. And there she was. She was standing near the fence wearing a simple sweater, her hair tied loosely, talking to a group of volunteers. I froze. Time didn't rewind, but it folded like the distance between us suddenly became visible. She saw me a second later. For a moment, her expression was unreadable. Then she smiled, soft, hesitant, but real. We didn't rush into anything. We worked side by side with others, speaking only when necessary, stealing small glances like teenagers who forgot how to be subtle. But the familiarity, the quiet, gentle ease, returned faster than either of us expected. During a break, she walked over and handed me a bottle of water. Our fingers brushed, and I felt that familiar warmth spark up my arm. "You look good," she said, searching my face as though comparing this version of me to the one she remembered. "So do you," I answered. And I meant it. There was a glow in her eyes I hadn't seen in a long time. Something steady and confident. A woman who had reclaimed her own story. We ended up talking under a tree while others cleared the path. Nothing heavy at first. Work, hobbies, small updates about neighbors. But as the afternoon settled, the conversation shifted naturally. "I didn't forget what happened," she said quietly. Not accusing, just honest. "But I also didn't forget how you made me feel before everything broke." I nodded. "I know I hurt you. I wish I could change it. But all I can do now is be better than I was." She watched me for a long moment, eyes softening. "I can see that," she whispered. "We didn't touch. We didn't make promises. We just sat together. And somehow that felt more intimate than anything we'd shared before." As the sun dipped behind the river, coloring the leaves in gold, she stood, brushed dirt from her jeans, and looked at me with a gentle vulnerability I hadn't seen since the beginning. "I didn't forget a single day," she said. Not dramatic, not desperate, just true. I felt the same words rising in me, but I held them back, letting the moment breathe. We weren't who we used to be. We were older versions, quieter, steadier, wiser, and if there was a second chance waiting for us, it needed to grow slowly without fear or pressure. When we walked to the parking lot at the end of the day, she reached for my hand for the first time in almost 2 years. Neither of us said a word, her fingers laced with mine like they had once before. And the silence between us felt like the beginning of something we both thought we'd lost forever. That night, I realized something simple but profound. She wasn't just coming back into my life. We were returning to each other. The weeks after we reunited at the park felt different. Not like the beginning of something new, but like rediscovering a path we had once lost. We didn't rush. We didn't pretend the past hadn't happened. Instead, we moved carefully, gently, as if we were both learning how to hold something fragile without breaking it. Some evenings we stayed after the volunteer group finished, sitting on the old bench by the river, watching the water drift under the bridge. She talked more openly than before, telling me about the quiet war she had fought with her past, her fears, her scars, the reasons trust had always felt like a risk rather than a gift. And I listened, not trying to fix anything, just letting her know she didn't have to carry it alone. One evening when the sunset turned the entire park warm and gold, she said softly, "I didn't just need time. I needed to become someone who could believe in good things again." Her voice trembled, but her eyes didn't. "And you? You waited without asking me to." I swallowed hard. "I never stopped caring about you. Not once." We didn't kiss that night. Instead, she leaned her head on my shoulder and I wrapped my arm around her in a way that felt steady, sure, and finally without fear. Sometimes closeness doesn't need anything more than that. But healing isn't a perfect upward climb. A few weeks later, her ex-husband showed up again, this time more insistent, pretending he wanted closure, pretending he had changed. I happened to arrive at her place while he was standing on her porch. The moment our eyes met, I felt that old protective instinct rise in me. She stepped between us before anything escalated. Her voice was calm, firm, almost peaceful. "No, I'm done repeating the past. I know what I want now. She closed the door behind him and turned back to me. There were tears in her eyes, but not from sadness. Relief, strength, a decision finally made. And for the first time, she leaned into me, not out of fear or confusion, but out of choice. I held her close, feeling her breathe against my shirt, and something inside me settled into place. From that night on, everything grew easier. We cooked dinner together again. We took long walks down our street as if reclaiming the life we had almost had. She reached for my hand without hesitation. And when she kissed me, really kissed me, it felt like 2 years of waiting folding into a single moment of clarity. One weekend, we returned to the park we had helped restore. It was quiet, empty, the late summer air warm around us. She stopped near the bench where we first talked again and turned toward me. I want to say something I should have said a long time ago, she whispered. Her fingers shook slightly as she took my hand. If you leave now, I'll never say it again. The same words she had whispered the night everything began. But this time, they weren't born from fear. They were a vow. I stepped closer, lifted her hand, and kissed the back of it slowly. I'm not going anywhere, I said, and I meant it with every part of me. Her eyes filled with warm, grateful tears, and she pulled me into her arms. Our kiss was soft, deep, certain. Two grown people choosing each other, not out of loneliness, but out of strength. Months later, on a quiet afternoon, surrounded by the people who had become part of our story, we stood together in that same park and shared a simple ceremony. No grand speeches, no dramatic gestures, just two 48-year-olds who finally understood the kind of love that survives storms, distance, and time. When we exchanged rings, she whispered the words only I could hear. You're home to me. Later that night, as we walked back to our street, hand in hand, porch lights glowing softly around us, I realized something I wish I'd known years earlier: love doesn't always arrive at the perfect moment. Sometimes it takes 2 years of mistakes, silence, rebuilding, and courage. But if both hearts keep their door open, finds its way back.